Babe, 16 years that you and I have been married.
It's true.
As of a couple of days ago.
Right. Yeah, it's been not so great, and it's been great.
Right. I've been great the whole time.
Of course.
Right. No, you're right. 8 years of not great marriage and 8 years of really God-inspired great marriage get us to 16 years now. So we thought we would take a break from the normal series that we're doing and just share a little bit of what we have learned after 16 years of marriage.
Right. Well, let's get into that. Hi, I'm Andrea Warnock.
I'm Nathan Warnock.
And you've joined us for Marriage Monday on the Marriage by Design podcast. And this is a time where we get to talk about marriage, the way God designed it, and how we, where we see that in Scripture, and then how we live that out practically.
Right. So Andrea and I, if you have followed us at all, we've shared a bit about our Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of marriage that we've had. So we've been married 16 years. For the first 8 of those years, it was
Hot
a
Mess
disaster.
Express.
And we've talked about that quite a bit on our channel. And if you're just coming across this video, please stick around. Listen to what we've learned over these 16 years. But if you're looking for hope in your marriage, I would encourage you to go back and listen to those first podcasts we did where we talked about what our marriage was like at the end of those first 8 years and how close to making a tragic mistake, an ungodly mistake, we really were at that point. So I'll link to those kind of throughout this video, and you can right-click them and put them on a separate tab, or if you're listening on podcast, you can go back to the very beginning of this channel. That's the first Marriage Monday series that we did. But praise the Lord, the next 8 years, the second half, we're halfway point. This is really a big anniversary for us, because moving forward now, we'll have not been a hot mess express longer than we were. But for, the grace of God and His leadership of the Holy Spirit in our lives, we'd be right back there, of course. So it's not anything we did; it's all that He's done in and through us. But we thought we would just share a little bit for those who are, married maybe less amount of time than we have, or maybe longer than we have, but are just interested in knowing what we've kind of taken away from these 16 years of marriage. We thought we'd share a few of those. So we'll just kind of go back and forth, and I'll let Andrea lead off. This isn't like a top 5 video that we do. We're not gonna do all that pomp and circumstance, but just kind of share back and forth and talk a little bit, maybe 3 or 4 things each that we've learned, and then we'll get about our Monday. So go for it, baby.
Yeah. So I'll give the caveat that my number one advice is always to put God number one.
Yeah.
But since that's what our channel is, the overarching theme of our channel, I skipped that.
Right. Let me just jump in, though, and say, if you're watching this video, and maybe your motivation in watching this is, we have some couples in our sphere of influence that are struggling, what advice could we give them? And maybe you're watching this because you've only been married a couple of years and you want some advice from someone that's been married longer. Very first advice would be, they've got to make their relationship with God number one. Fascinatingly, it seems like when Christian couples start struggling, the first thing to go is their pursuit of the Lord. And it really just complicates all the other problems that they have.
Yeah, and I promise, if you have 2 people who are putting the Lord first, everything else will fall
100%.
in place.
That's exactly right.
Every single time.
Yep.
Promise.
Yep, exactly right.
So, so my first more practical thing that I've learned in our marriage, which is, we went to dinner on Friday night when we were celebrating our anniversary. We started out with dinner, and the waitress was, asking us why we're there, and so we told her, and she was like, "Oh, well, that's so great. What advice do you have?" So this is what I told her, and I said, always be intentional in your marriage with everything. And it's amazing how easy that is to not do, but it's also amazing how that changes your marriage when you choose to be intentional with your time, your priorities, your finances, your words, your everything. When you think the things that come out of my mouth mean something, the things that I do with my time mean something, and they affect my marriage. And so choosing to not just let the days go by and see what comes of that, but instead thinking I want to be intentional with what I'm doing in my marriage, is so important for us. And we've found really makes a huge difference in our lives. So being intentional, in every aspect of our marriage is important. Being intentional to take those date nights when we'd rather maybe stay home and sleep, or or get together with friends, even though maybe it takes 2 weeks to try to figure out a date that works for you both, or because of busy schedules or whatever that is. Just being intentional in our lives has been hugely important for us.
Yeah, that's really good. It's funny you brought up the example of having date nights, because a lot of couples, particularly as we get older, we sort of can fall into this we like having just quiet nights at home. And 100%, I mean, that's a
Sure,
great thing, and it's a great place to be in your marriage, where we can just sit together and hang out, and that's still awesome. But I still would make the case that there's something about going out together that adds some third dimension to your marriage that's important. Because a lot of our, the secret language that you and I have, the jokes that we have, and the things that we have that go on between us that give real depth to our marriage, happen when we're out places together, on little trips, or going out to dinner, or going out and doing things we like to do together. That's an important piece of it, but you got to be intentional to do that.
Yep.
That kind of ties into the first one I wanted to share, which is to intentionally build intimacy within your marriage. One of the things that I really mourn for young couples is this trap that a lot of young married couples fall into, that they're going to have intimacy in their marriage. Right. And to be clear, I'm not talking about sex. I'll get to that in a minute.
I think you always do.
But of course I do. But I'm putting this first intentionally, because I want to help people understand, if you're watching this, that you can't, anything that's valuable, we spend time building it, right? So if you're going to build a home, when someone asks you, you don't tell them, well, yeah, we're going to have a home. Well, no, you're building a home, right? And we understand that means there's a lot of time involved. There's money involved. There's emotional investment involved. All of these things happen when we build a home, build a business, build a model at home, anything you're building takes those things: time, emotion, intentionality, money. Tools. I mean, right, these tools, these kinds of things happen. And yet we get into marriage and we say, I do, and we think, well, we're just going to have intimacy in our marriage. And you won't, because for one thing, the two of you are going to change constantly and immensely over the course of your marriage. That's just how human beings are, because circumstances change. Your job changes you over time. You living with each other changes you over time. Then you throw in the mix having children, or having a pet, or any of the things that that we do as couples, and those things change you. And if you don't have intentional building intimacy time where you're pursuing each other, date nights are a good example of that. Just having intentional time, putting your phones and electronics away weekly or whatever it would be, to have time doing it. Those things are all important things, and they help you to build intimacy within your marriage. And that building of intimacy is the part that we missed for the first 8 years and changed in the second 8 years.
Yep.
And because of that, we have an intimate relationship, but we built that. It didn't just happen.
Yeah. I was looking for what my next one was.
Oh. Okay. You were gonna take a call or something.
No. So my next one is to flip the script. So the next thing that I've learned is to focus on your spouse's wants and needs and focus on how you can be a better spouse. And our natural fleshly inclination is to instead focus on my wants and needs and how my spouse needs to change to meet those, or just change in general. And that's not the way the Lord intended godly marriage to be. We're supposed to put our spouse before ourselves. And so so flipping your nature to not be thinking of yourself in your marriage, but instead to be thinking of your spouse, especially we have kids playing here.
Usually we tape these at night, but we're taping this one in the afternoon, and the kids are playing. Jackson
so if you hear
has
that,
a friend over, and
they're just kids playing all over everywhere.
Right.
So instead thinking of how when I start to be self-focused, thinking that's not the way God intended it to be, and flipping that and really thinking of my spouse. And I think what I was saying is, especially when you're in hard times in your marriage, that's going to be, of course, the hardest time to do that, but it's probably also the most important time to do that, because you'll make huge strides in getting out of that rut or getting out of that difficult situation.
Yeah.
If you're instead focused on the other person. So it's hard to do, and I struggle with that a lot. So it's not like something I feel like I've conquered or whatever, but something that I'm always working towards.
That's good, Ben. That's good. The next thing I wanted to talk about.
We know what's coming.
Sex.
At least at least you left it for number 2.
That's right. Sex does matter in marriage, and this is a topic that, if you follow our channel, we're in the midst of a kind of topical series on sex, and we've gotten so much feedback on an episode that we did about 3 weeks ago or so, talking about what sex was designed to be. And there's no secret, if you follow this channel, I enjoy sex as a thing. Like, I have a hot wife. We have a great sexual relationship. We didn't for a long time, so I think I enjoy it all the more now that we do. As a side note, if you're watching this and you think sex in our marriage is dead, take hope from us that if you're intentional about rebuilding and allowing the Lord to bring redemption in that area of your marriage, you can have an amazing sexual relationship, even if there's mismanagement or wrongful sexual relationship in the past. Would you agree with that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So please, hear that, as that's partly why I am so passionate about sex within our marriage, because it shouldn't be a thing. Like, that shouldn't have never been a thing in our marriage after those first 8 years. But for couples that are watching this, the sex within your marriage does matter. And we just refuse to accept the reality that sex is important. That's it. We don't need to have caveats in that, right? I mean, whenever we kind of talk about this, you immediately get, even within the church, I hear this, like sex starts outside of the bedroom. Right, but also it's sex. So there's no... See, when we try to torture the Bible to make it sound like what we want it to sound like, then we get down these weird roads. Like, men, yes, sex does... pursuing your wife sexually starts outside of the bedroom. Ladies, if he's not doing that, that doesn't change the obligation to pursue your husband sexually at all. Mm-hmm. So we don't get to do this excuse making of, we would have a great sexual relationship if he did this. Or, if she would just do this thing I want her to do, then we'd have a great sexual relationship. That's not how that works. And it goes back to what you just said a minute ago. It's fun how these are dovetailing off each other, because if sex is about you, you're never going to have good sex in your marriage. You're not going to. Because you know who the first person that's going to know sex is all about you is?
Your spouse.
Your spouse. And that essentially makes them a hoe. I mean, it does. Let's just be honest. That's what is happening. Is you're using your spouse for your own needs without any consideration of the thing that they need. I mean, that's what that is. And you know, let's not do that to our spouses, but rather at a young married age, let's be intentional about creating a sexual atmosphere within our marriage where we're pursuing each other, talking openly about sex, what is good, what's not good.
Yep.
Because, man, the thing I've found, and this is why it's such a big piece of my advice, is by a year or 18 months into a marriage, that ship oftentimes is sailed for a couple. It's either going to be good from there on out or it's going to not. And again, you heard my redemption story. We went for 8 years with a bad sexual relationship, and then God brought redemption to that. So there's hope to that, but I'm just telling you, if you're a young married couple, man, be diligent in this area, because it can be so easy. It's one of those places Satan likes to get his fingers in and start prying you apart and open up the way to temptation and all sorts of other insanity. So, yes, sex is probably not the second most important thing in marriage as a thing, but it's awfully close if it's not. And, you know, we all know that, right? I mean, how it's like this thing we don't talk about, but everybody knows that it's a thing.
Yeah.
And, man, let's start talking about it. As godly couples, as Christian couples, let's start talking about it.
Yeah.
Right? Let's talk about, you know, we talk about our kids. We talk about finances. We talk about all this stuff that's important in marriage. And yet, for some reason, we like to let the world define what sex in marriage is going to look like or not look like, and shame on us as the church for allowing that. Let's not allow it anymore. Let's be diligent about building an amazing sexual atmosphere in our marriage, how we do that in a God-honoring way, and then let's not be afraid to, in a God-honoring way, share that with other people and encourage them in that way.
Yeah. So be diligent in your sex life.
That's right.
Okay, so the last thing that I would say is like a big thing I've learned in our marriage is to have fun.
Yeah,
and all these things we've talked about in the podcast before. But life can get, as we get older, life can get to be just kind of, you wake up, you do the same thing, Groundhog's Day, and you go back, you go to bed, I'm worn out, and I just, I'm repeating the same thing day in and day out, and it can be a kind of a grind, and maybe you even, maybe it's I'm not going to say that. Maybe.
What's that?
I was going to say maybe you're grinding together. I mean, that would be good. Go back to Nathan's number 2. But maybe you're both feeling like, yes, we're in this grind together, and it just is what it is right now. We've got kids going here and there and everywhere, and we've got jobs and blah, 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 And maybe you're not like floundering in your marriage. That's great.
Right.
But is there any fun happening, or is it rare? Yeah. Are you seeking out opportunities to have fun with each other and finding out what would my husband think is really fun, and let's do that, and then vice versa, or what do I think is fun? Let's go out and do that too.
Right.
That's okay too. So, just going back to my number 1, being intentional to have fun, and it doesn't just naturally happen very often.
No.
Whereas when you're a child, play is just part of your life, and having fun is just kind of what you're supposed to do when you're a child. And that goes away as you get to be an adult because you have so many responsibilities and life just happens. So get out of the ruts of the normal thing and just being tired and just life happening, and make a plan to have some fun, whatever that looks like for you. Fun is different for different people.
Sure.
I'm very adventurous, love traveling, I love being spontaneous, and fun for me is sometimes different than what is fun for Nathan or fun for another person.
Sure.
But we pursue those things in each other. And, for our anniversary, we decided we weren't going to just do the normal, like, dinner and maybe go home and watch a movie or whatever. So we went to dinner, And then we went out dancing. We went country dancing, and then we played games for till like 3 o'clock in the morning. We went out somewhere and played some games till 3 a.m. and we got home really late, and we didn't have the kids, and it was great fun. We both really loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And something that we normally, those are things that we don't usually take the time to do. Certainly not being out till 3 a.m.
Right.
But it was so much fun, and we have a lot of great memories from it.
Yep.
So
yeah,
I'm glad we packed that night full.
No doubt. No doubt. That's great. The last thing I wanted to share is be community builders as a couple. This is one the way I kind of thought about this list is I thought about the big differences between us back then and us now. And one of the biggest ones, you and I talk about this all the time, is we have a community now. And to steal that sort of blended family line that we hear of his, hers, and ours, where a man and a woman come together and he's got children and she's got children and then they have a child or children of their own. That's kind of how I think about community. We have a his, hers, and ours community, and I think that's the model we should be shooting for. And praise the Lord for that.
Which
we love our couple friends. But also, I've got friends that, Andrea likes them. I mean, she's very kind to them. She's great, hostess when they're over and we go out and do things with them, and it's great. But, they're maybe not people you're really close with, and that's okay. Did you what?
I don't hang out with guys on my own anyway.
Well, that's what I mean. Like I have guy friends. I have some single guy friends,
right?
And you don't hang out with them because they're
here.
Single guy friends.
Yep.
And you have girlfriends who are either single girlfriends or girlfriends where for whatever reason I'm not close with their husband, and so you just hang out with them, and that's great. And then we have our couple friends, and you're right. And I'd say probably a lot of our his and hers friends are also ours friends.
Yes, which has been a prayer of ours for years.
Right. But that didn't just happen.
It didn't.
And I would say it didn't happen for us really at all until we started putting ourselves out there.
Yeah, we became really intentional.
Right. And so that would be my encouragement for you is, but we want people to just pursue us. We've met with some people in the past that were really upset because they'd been attending the church for a while and just no one was pursuing friendship with them. And our question to them was, well, who have you pursued friendship with? Because we get this sort of tunnel vision in our lives, it goes back to the grind of life, where we have our routines, and especially the older you get, your routine starts getting streamlined, right? And so for people outside of that routine to break into the routine can be challenging.
Yeah.
And so, if you're in that position where you go, man, I want friends, but it seems like everyone I meet has friends already, that doesn't preclude you from being their friend.
Absolutely.
What it does mean is you and your spouse have to be intentional.
And it's hard work.
Right. That means you gotta be the ones to say, hey, why don't you come over and have dinner with us? And most couples you would want to be friends with are going to go, yeah, let's do that. And then if you don't do the next step of, hey, can we get something on the calendar right now? It isn't going to happen. And what's likely to happen is you and that other couple are going to walk away with this hurt feeling of, well, man, they said they wanted to do something with me, and then nobody ever reached out. When it's just, we just get back in our routine, and then it's like, oh, here we go.
Right.
So, man, be intentional about finding the people you want to be friends with, and you make it happen.
Yeah.
Right? Be a friend to those people, and you will find out that they want to be a friend with you as well. And you know what? Sometimes you might find that they don't. And you know what? That's okay.
Yeah, I read something somewhere that making friends as an adult is kind of like dating, where it's awkward at first. You have to really, it doesn't just like naturally happen. Your conversations may feel a little wonky.
Right.
It's rare that as an adult you just find those people where the first 10 seconds you're like, oh my gosh, we just clicked perfectly.
Right.
And that was years ago that I read that. And so for me, kind of life-changing in that, everybody feels this way a lot of times when they're trying to pursue a new friendship.
Yeah.
And when you're dating, sometimes it doesn't work out. And you just say, we just didn't click. That's okay.
Right.
No problem.
Yeah, that's right.
And sometimes you find people that you really do click with, and so you keep pursuing that and finding things that you enjoy doing together, and you know, so it can be this weird, like, wonky feeling thing for a while with people, and then you start building relationship, building some history of conversation, and you know, maybe it'll take off.
Right. Yeah. I don't, and I didn't tell him I was going to share this, so I won't use his name, but there was someone in my life that I was kind of friends with this person's dad first in like a mentor relationship, and I'd met them several times, and long time before I was ever friends with them, I sort of made this decision that I wanted to be friends with that person. And then it was a couple of years later that we finally realized we had something in common, and so, you know, we sort of rallied around that thing that we have in common, and now he's one of my best friends. But it took time. And you know, this kind of goes back to the thing of we want things like, okay, I want a friend group tomorrow. And it isn't gonna work that way. But you won't have friends a year from now if you don't start tomorrow. So as a couple, you know, be intentional about inviting other people that you want to be friends with around you and make it happen. Right. So. Yep.
And if somebody's inviting you, reciprocate that.
Yeah. Yep.
Be the pursuer too.
Yeah, this goes to something, not to cross plug another show we're going to do, but we're going to be doing a Family Friday here in a couple of weeks about how do we teach our children to be includers. Yeah. So, you know, and that applies to adults too. So if that's something you feel like you struggle with, check that episode out, because all the things we're going to talk about with regards to our kids apply to us as adults as well.
Did you have anything else? Any other big lessons learned from 16 years?
No, babe, I'm really glad we're together. I love you so much.
Thank you. I love you too.
I'm so glad we're doing this adventure
Crazy
together.
Life. Yep.
Crazy life. That's right. That's right. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully you take one or two or three things away from us kind of talking about our last 16 years that resonates with you. Hopefully you are enjoying the channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, please share it with someone that you think would benefit from hearing this. That's a really key part of this channel, is just getting information out to other people that will benefit from it. If you're listening to it on podcast, same thing. Love to have you share it with someone you think will be encouraged. Love to get your feedback on our Facebook page. That's Marriage by Design Podcast on Facebook, or you can leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube.
Great.
All right, guys, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Have a very Merry Christmas the end of this week. And a week from now, we will see you again for another Marriage Monday. Until then, remember, God is for your marriage. See you then.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.